Okay, thanks everyone. We'll continue letting folks into the room as we're going here. And I'll just get started so we can have some discussion and questions and talk about Norden for sure. So a couple of quick announcements here. For anyone who's following this, the O&G concrete plant and processing center down on Smith Street, that public hearing is scheduled for this, I think I have Wednesday here, actually. I need to update that. It's actually Thursday. It's on June 20th, which is Thursday. The city website has all the information regarding this application, and you can also see the City Hall Neighborhood Association. They maintain a Facebook page, and in our prior emails, we've also included contact information for both the folks who run the City Hall Neighborhood Association and also the Norwalk Green Association. And we can repost those again tonight or tomorrow, so you can reach out to get more info. But basically, just to refresh everyone's memory, this is a public hearing on an updated and expanded use of the O&G property that could see upwards of dozens of trucks coming in and out of Smith Street, which is down the hill from down to the water from City Hall. And they would be coming through using East Avenue, obviously primarily, and then either heading to the highway or out to the Post Road, etc. So this is a pretty controversial application, and I believe it's being heard. The application is being presented and the public comment open all in the same night, which is actually Thursday the 20th. So I'll get this corrected here. The city website for all the information on that is under the Planning and Zoning tab under City Government. And the tab under Planning and Zoning is called Pending Applications. And you'll be able to click on Smith Street. That's what you'll want to look for. And then you'll see all of the documents associated with this. Another announcement, some of you may have already heard or seen in the local news, but the Common Council, both District C Common Council members have resigned, both for personal family commitments and obligations and other reasons, but effective very soon, we'll be short 2 Common Council members, both of whom are from our district, both of whom are Democrats. So I think the process with that worked where there will be nominations from the district and to the Democratic Town Committee, and then names would be put forward, presumably Democrats. So if there's anyone in District C who's interested in putting your name forward for one of these seats, or if there's someone that you want to nominate who you believe is a Democrat, then we urge you to do that soon. I think both of these resignations become effective next month. Okay, and we have, so there's no guest speaker tonight, and really we're going to focus on just a few items. Let me skip Norden Place for a moment here. Cemetery Street, just want to bring everyone up to date that apparently we still have continued violations there regarding the stormwater runoff coming from the parcel that now has a demolished bank on it. And each time it rains, particularly with these very, very heavy rains, there's all kinds of muddy brown, yucky runoff coming from the parcel into the mill pond, which that's a tidal wetland there. So it ultimately also runs into the Norwalk Harbor and river there. So the folks who live in that area are continuing to send emails and notifications into the city. I understand recently they also sent some updated pictures from this last rainstorm. And so hopefully the city will get after them with some violations and fines and encourage them to comply with managing the stormwater runoff on their own property. It's not legal either under the planning and zoning regs or the building permit for them to allow all of this to go into the pond. The other curious thing with Cemetery Street and this development is there's been very little or no activity there since the actual demolition process. So folks have been trying to get some information on that, and we understand that the developer has been non-responsive, and some folks were volunteered to reach out to City Hall today and get some more information from the building department to see if they have any reason why this development has suddenly come to a halt after it was, kind of virtually rushed through, to get this built. So as we get some more information, we'll pass that along to folks. While I'm on that topic too, I'll just remind people that whenever you see any kind of a zoning or building violation, it's really helpful to report that into the city as soon as you can. Pictures help. And rather than trying to track down which department is responsible for which codes and ordinances, we recommend that you send all of these things right into the customer service department. You can do that via email or through what's called their click and report system. And you can do that online through the city website, or you can download the app to do that. But the sooner you report something, and the more ability you have to provide a picture or a video, the more effective it is in terms of getting information to the city, and then for them to be able to enforce things as well. And then just a quick note, we don't have any other updated information yet on the what was the former Jimmy's Deli, which has now been taken down. We understand that the city is still awaiting a permit application, and we'll get an update on that this week as well. And then we'll talk about this at the end of the meeting, but basically you hear me talk about this at almost every meeting, that ENNA really needs volunteers from the community to step up and help with the load that we have in terms of monitoring government activities that impact East Norwalk, but also doing research, writing letters, helping to review city ordinances and zoning regulations, etc. Also keeping up to date on any activities that the city is proposing for East Norwalk as well. We really can't do this without volunteers, and it's become more and more of a burden for the board members and for the handful of people that do step up to help. So I just really want to say that it's not overstating it to say that if we don't have volunteers, there really is no ENNA. ENNA is the organization that is the community, and we need as many people to volunteer to help as possible. Okay, so I think that there's probably a bunch of people that are here that are interested in talking about Norden. Okay, so very quickly, I think everyone is already up to date on this, but most of you should know that the Norden application was approved on a 6-3 vote. The video of the public hearings and the ultimate rebuttal by the attorneys, all of that is online on the city's YouTube page. So you can go back and look for those planning and zoning meetings. You can find the dates on the city website and then take a look at those meetings. You can actually watch the rebuttal of the public comment that the attorney did, and then you can, we would encourage you to watch the discussion and debate and ultimate vote itself. But this passed on a 6-3 vote, and it actually becomes effective basically on the 14th, I think it was. And I'll talk in a minute about any possibility for appeal on this. A couple of important things to note is when you look at how controversial and the magnitude and the kind of unusual nature of this application, I've been following these things for a number of years, and I would say that there really was very few questions that were asked by the commission. And I think that as an organization and as a community, we need to have a little pushback on that to make sure that that the commissioners aren't just reading all the questions and concerns and comments and suggestions that come in from the community, but they are also articulating them themselves and making sure these things are getting answered. And there were some questions that would lead us to believe that there was genuine concern for the community should this get approved. There were, I mean, we probably could have pages of questions under a category of we wish they would have asked this. So it's something that I think that we need to, again, as a community, we need to push back on and make sure that we're really making sure that the commission is asking, you know, all the questions that should be asked and really vetting these things. And especially on applications where it seems like they've already made up their mind early on that it's something they're likely to approve. In terms of the approval, the time clock for any type of an appeal actually starts from the time that the legal notice is posted in the local paper that identifies that the application was approved. And it was posted in the Norwalk Hour on June 10th. And so the any notice of appeal to the city would have to be served by June 25th at the latest. There are limited grounds for appeal, especially because this was not a special permit application. It was a site plan review. In this public meeting, I don't know that I want to speak about any particulars to what the grounds for appeal would be right now. We can talk in general, but because this is a public meeting and we ultimately post it, I don't feel comfortable in disclosing anything that we have discussed with the attorney that we hired just as a consultant to review the application. So even though there's limited grounds for appeal, and we hope to be able to increase that list should there be an appeal, there's zero opportunity to actually do an appeal unless there's an abutter who's willing to put their name to it. The way that the law works is that only someone who has legal standing, who stands to be impacted by this decision, has the legal right to actually appeal the decision. And generally speaking, that is an abutter to the property. And it also includes property owners that are within 100 feet of any portion of the parcel. And so ENNA obviously cannot be an appellate and be named as the in the appeal. In terms of whether or not anyone is interested in doing an appeal, we've been told by the consulting attorney that an initial retainer for filing generally is in the $2,500 range, but that appeals themselves typically run between $10,000 and $20,000, depending on how lengthy it is and court appearances and filings, etc. Any abutter that does come forward in this time frame would need to be able to establish a GoFundMe or some sort of fundraising vehicle, and ENNA would help to promote that and encourage people to support the appeal of it, since we were the led the primary opposition to this. The one thing to understand is that in order to just file the appeal or serve the papers, there doesn't have to be the full-blown appeal written out and the actual case presented. It just needs to be that a notice of intent to appeal. It has to contain, it can contain limited information and then be filed with the court and served to the city of Norwalk and to the city of Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission. And that qualifies as having filed the appeal under the deadline, as long as that's done by end of business day on the 25th. And I would encourage by the 24th, just to be safe. And then one thing to understand is there are few attorneys who generally are willing or able to perform an appeal like this. It's considered what they consider opposition work. And most of them actually represent clients who are applying for developments and other land uses before these city agencies. And so there aren't a lot of law firms that actually do the business of opposition work. And when you're trying to stay relatively local, it gets a little bit harder even still, because many of the local law firms that have any groups that do land use work generally, or many of them have actual conflicts, because either they are familiar with they've done work for the property owner, they may have done work for a prospective developer, or they may have done work for the city of Norwalk. And so that generally excludes them, or the attorney who does opposition work may have a personal conflict as well. So it's not easy to, and we know this from experience, it's not easy to come up with folks who are both willing and able to do this. And we haven't made any kind of a presumption from from Attorney Joel Gray that helped to review the application at this point, whether he is available or willing to go forth. I can only tell you that he has stressed that the most important thing is to be able to find someone to actually put their name to it as an abutter. He also advised that the more abutters that are willing to put their name to appeal, the better it is, instead of just one person. But obviously with just one person, it can still go forth. Another thing to know about appeals is that should you file the appeal with the court and the judge do not look kindly or lightly on then withdrawing the appeal. So you can't just simply say that we filed it and now we want to withdraw it. You actually have to go back to the court and make a request to withdraw it. I think it's probably in an effort to reduce frivolous cases. But in any event, whoever the attorney would be would actually have to present an argument for why the appellants want to withdraw. And I have been told either can't raise the funds to fund the work, or you subsequently run out of funds, that's generally obviously accepted by the court, and then you simply withdraw the appeal in that process. Okay, any questions on this appeal process? And ENNA, just so folks on here know, has reached out to the folks that we know are abutting property owners and properties that we have reason to believe could be within 100 feet of the parcel, and also have suggested to the people that we know who are part of the Halstead development, the apartment complex on the parcel, to be able to reach out to the property management company and the owners, because we understand from the attorney that the owners of Halstead actually qualify as an appellant. And so that organization itself could actually file. So we'll see what happens with that. ENNA is not in a position, though, to be able to try to coordinate the appeal itself. I mean, we will assist in any manner that we're able to, but in terms of just being able to hook someone up, either with the attorney that we used in consultation on the application review, or maybe to try to assist to find another attorney. But beyond that, it would literally be handed off to who's ever going to do the appeal. And again, we would assist with promoting fundraising, and we could also assist in providing some historical information and help to do research as well that would assist in the case. Okay, Charles, sorry with this sun in my face. I need to readjust here. Is there anything in chat that I need to before we?
No, I'm not saying anything.
Okay, and we can come back to this notion of appeal. The reason why I wanted to bring this up now is because of this statutory time clock, and so once this time clock passes, there's really no other vehicle for the community to try and stop this this application from going through. And we already know at this point that that the applicant and the property owner are not really agreeable to making any modifications that would be other than what was in the resolution. Any of the conditions that are in there, they don't seem likely to want to restrict any hours, reduce anything with the trucks, etc. By the way, too, I think what we'll do is, if I have time this week, I will post, and the city finally posted it, but I will post the actual resolution that the Planning and Zoning Commissioners reviewed and approved. And I believe now it's also posted, but we'll have a copy of it, the endless list of conditions that were put upon this application as well. Some of them have a little bit of teeth in it, but as usual, there are some that it's left to residents to kind of self-inspect and report to the city. And then it's up to the city to enforce the conditions as well. And I'll leave that at that for now. We can come back and talk about that. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to walk through tonight, and I apologize, this is completely my own fault, but I wanted to try to get a timeline together in here, and I'm still going to try to do that so that we have it. But what I wanted to do is actually put together a timeline for how and why this happened. We saw a lot of questions coming into ENNA via email. During the public hearings, people were asking us on social media. People are trying to figure out how something like this could happen and why Norden parcel was left open to this type of a use and the scale of use to begin with. So I just wanted to just take a minute and run quickly through this, and then I'll try to clean this up and get it out to everyone. But basically what we have is Norden Park. I'm not going to go into the whole history of this, but most people know that for the most part it was industrial for a long time, and all the time that Northrop Grumman had it and Norden had it as their industrial site for their facility. And then going back as far as the 1990s or maybe before that, the parcel was actually zoned as restricted industrial. And there were only a couple of other parcels in the city that had that designation, but it did restrict the use, and it had very specific uses that could and couldn't go on the parcel. This may have happened around the same time that actually the controversial Avalon, which is now Halsted, was under review and then subsequently built. But then if you fast forward to the 2020 and 2021 timeframe, many of you will recall that a special permit came in for what was dubbed the Warehouse Distribution Center. And Warehouse Distribution Center is one of the uses that was in this zone that we objected to just because of the size and scale of what that would be in terms of the operation, the hours of operation, and trucks in and out. It was an important note here that's of interest is that the applicant for the Warehouse Distribution Center was a company that's owned by Craig Benneroff. Now, without going into a lot of detail, before the special permit came to a public hearing and vote, Mr. Benneroff and his company subsequently withdrew the application. So there was never a vote, there's no denial, and it just kind of went away. But in the meantime, when that went away, in 2021 started the beginning process of the city having funded an industrial zone study. And the purpose for that was to look at all the industrial zones in the city, which are kind of scattered almost everywhere in the city, except the obvious places. And the city wanted to take a look at all the industrial zones by hiring a consultant that could analyze them, take a look at where these zones should be, where they might be reduced, where they should be enlarged, and specifically to take a look at which uses are appropriate in the industrial zones. And the goal was then to refine these zones so that it met the need for having some industrial in the city, which is desirable for a whole host of reasons, but not having so much industrial that it begins to impact on the quality of life, especially in the neighborhoods. During the industrial zone study, one of the things that the consultant recommended among a number of items was to have a separate study be funded for the Norden parcel. At the same time, they also recommended that the city should consider funding a separate study that would be just for the waterfront industrial, because that's so uniquely different than industrial at Norden Park or off of Main Avenue, or in South Norwalk, say down on Wilson Street and Meadow. And so the city took a look at that. And in the end, Steve Kleppen and the Planning and Zoning Commission opted to only fund the industrial waterfront study and chose not to fund the separate Norden study. And at that time, we were completely baffled by that because there's probably no other parcel in Norwalk that's quite as unique as Norden. And we knew that in lieu or in the absence of a separate study, that this parcel would remain as what was dubbed industrial 2 and have all of these objectionable industrial uses still within it. And it would stay that way until a study could be funded. And so Steve Kleppen and the commission chose not to do that. And this was after multiple requests from ENNA and the community to put the funding in the capital budget. And so it ultimately got funded, but still has never gone out to bid to actually commission the study. So what ends up happening in the overall industrial zone study is that P&Z Commission and Steve Kleppen, ultimately they eliminate the restricted industrial zone altogether. And they classified Norden under industrial 2. And even though the industrial 2 uses did eliminate some of the objectionable possibilities that could be in any of these industrial 2 zones, it still would be an industrial zone, and it would still be open to a number of different applications. And so we continued to push back against that to try to update industrial 2 zone to remove those, and then also to continue to try to get the study. But what happened in the industrial zone study in that zone was that as they were reconfiguring the uses that they thought would be appropriate in all the industrial 2 zones, which include part of other parts of East Norwalk and South Norwalk, they ultimately add, when I say they, Steve Kleppen and the commission, ultimately add in a new use called Transportation Maintenance Terminal. And it went in as what's called an as of right use, meaning it wouldn't require a special permit. It would only require a review of the site plan, which hopefully by now all of you understand the difference with that, but I can answer questions if we need to at the end. So in goes this Transportation Maintenance Terminal. And so ENNA and residents pushed back on this. And in addition to a number of other items that were on that list, we asked for this to be removed from industrial 2. And we asked specifically for that because we were concerned that this could be a future application in Norden Park. And so we were concerned right from the get-go. And the only way that we could ensure that this wouldn't happen would be to remove the use out of that zone. So when the industrial zone study came, Steve Kleppen convinced the planning and zoning commissioners that this was a type of use that the city would encourage just by the nature of the use itself, which baffles all of us to this day because it does, it does nothing for the Norwalk community. Nothing that would really make a great impact on grand lists, on tax revenues, etc. And so, despite the repeated request to take this out in other uses, the P&Z Commission didn't act on our recommendation, and they did take out a couple of uses, but for some reason that we couldn't figure out back then, they chose specifically to keep this one in, and then they adopted the plan. So while that's going on and cycling through 2022, Norden remained as the industrial zone with this transportation maintenance terminal in there. And then the city started to undertake the citywide zoning regulation update for all the zones in the city. And this is the one that you're probably most familiar with because it went on for months and it had multiple public meetings and forums, and just in every zone in the city really was updated with regulations. And that is the regulation that was adopted in 2023 at the end of the year, and finally did not have the transportation maintenance terminal in there. But the only problem is that even though it was adopted in December of 2023, it was not to become effective until February 19th, 2024. And I have to check my date there. It may have actually been adopted in January, but it was the December, early January timeframe, and not to be effective until February 19th of 2024. But you can see now the transportation maintenance terminal is out. But what happened then is on February 14th, prior to the new regulations becoming effective, the applicant who owns the parcel, Norwalk Center LLC, and presumably their partner who funded the traffic study, applied for transportation maintenance terminal under the old regulations before the new regulations went into effect. The partner who's named on the traffic study that was commissioned by the applicants is Benaroff, the same applicant who had applied for the warehouse distribution center, and which ultimately probably would have been denied based on all of the traffic and impact that would have had. But he subsequently withdrew, and now you can see that in this time frame, now he's back with this application. And so the reason why this time frame is important, and I want you to focus on things that weren't in zoning, and then they were in zoning, and then they came out of zoning, is that essentially what happened with this use is everything to get it in as a use happened starting almost immediately following the withdrawal of the warehouse distribution center application. And it goes right up through the time with traffic studies, civil engineering, applications to the state of Connecticut for traffic review oversight, a whole host of landscaping, stormwater management, all of the things that compose of a full zoning application. All of those things start happening almost immediately, and they start happening in conjunction with the industrial zone study. And so what it appears, and this is not like conspiracy theorists, it's all there in the dates, is that this particular use went in for this particular application in the time frame that it would have been allowed, and P&Z Commission refused to take it out, even though it made no sense to have it in there. And it stayed in as long as a point of time for the applicant to get their application in. Literally less than a week before the zoning went into effect. So this is kind of, when people say how and why did this happen, this is kind of a little snapshot of when we say that things happen. And when I say we mean ENNA and other community neighborhood associations have noted this as well. And it's not unique to Norwalk by any stretch of the imagination. But what ends up happening is so many of these large controversial applications end up really developing behind closed doors for months and often years prior to it becoming an actual application. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. One of which is that once an applicant actually files an application with zoning, it becomes a matter of public record. And until they do that, very little, if any, of their interaction with city agencies and city officials is subject to freedom of information inquiries. Because while those discussions of possible uses are going on, the FOI Commission considers that to be discussions that are in draft. And so while it's in draft form, they're not covered under FOI. They also consider the fact that FOI also protects to a certain degree that something shouldn't be disclosed that compromises someone's confidentiality in terms of a potential purchase of a property, or impacts it with public knowledge that would then, say if word got out that somebody was looking to buy a particular parcel, then the owner of that parcel or other interested parties then could work to inflate the price. But anyway, there's a whole host of reasons that things go on behind closed doors. Another reason is that because so many of the work that goes into filing a zoning application of this nature has to start months before, because it requires traffic studies, environmental impact reports, civil engineering, sign-offs from multiple departments. Oftentimes they have to go to state of Connecticut agencies. They have to be signed off by other local agencies. And sometimes they also have to be provided to abutting communities, depending on where the parcel is. Our neighboring towns would have to be notified as well. So all of these things are happening behind closed doors, and there's no way for the public to know that. And so we just kind of have to accept that. However, prior to an application actually being submitted into the zoning office, ENNA considers it kind of a courtesy that the applicant would then provide notice to us that they were about to file an application. Pardon me. And in this case, despite the fact that Steve Kleppen and his staff and the P&Z Commission and even Attorney Suchi, even though they were well aware of the fact that ENNA and the community had great interest in this parcel, none of us were made aware of this application being filed until after the fact, and it kind of popped up on the screen there. And so we don't really have an opportunity to work with an applicant when that actually happens. And so in this case, you can see the timing that this use didn't exist, then it was put in, then it was taken out, but it was taken out in a time frame where all of the background work that happened over the past 1.5 to 2 years was able to bring this to fruition in time to get it in under the gun, under the regulation of what would have changed there. And so that's how this came to be. And this is the type of thing that when ENNA is trying to scrutinize zoning regulations, and there's something bizarre like this particular use, one of the first questions we always ask is, well, do you have an application that you think is coming forward? And in this case, we were repeatedly told no for anything having to do with Norden. For months and months and months, we would, ask every once in a while, what is coming through? Or are you expecting anything? Our argument during the zoning regulations in all of these zoning studies and ultimate zoning regulations that were approved was to tell Steve Kleppen and the commission that if you're putting in a use that the community considers to be objectionable, and yet you tell us, well, you're not really expecting any application for it, so it's really unlikely that anything would materialize. Our point of view then is don't include this as an allowable land use then. Take it out of the zoning regulations so that we're not at risk every day of someone then coming in and applying for something. And in this case, this is exactly what happened. We said by leaving it in, every single day we have a ticking time bomb just waiting for someone to come in and file an application for a transportation maintenance terminal or a petroleum processing facility. Or there was a few other ones too that were just as bad, if not worse. And so then what happens is they don't take it out. And once an application comes in, this is another regulation that you should be aware of, is that once an application comes in, the city cannot not accept it as an application. They literally need to take it in as an application and review it. And if it meets the standards of what the regulations are, they're required to process the application before the full Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's why we say by the time an application comes in, that very often we're doomed because there's no way to stop it at that point, unless we can convince an applicant to simply withdraw, withdraw the application, and then they can come back at a later date or they can withdraw altogether. But I can count on less than one hand the times that has happened throughout the city of Norwalk, not just in East Norwalk. Okay, so I'm going to stop gabbing there, probably more information than people wanted to know, but I really felt that it was important to explain to people why ENNA took the position that this was put into zoning specifically for this use and then subsequently withdrawn once the application came in. The other reason why that's important, and when you listen to the rebuttal, if you haven't already, you'll hear Attorney Suchi dispute this, but I would say that there's probably a good lawyer somewhere that would be able to make a case that what happened here with Steve Kleppen and the Planning and Zoning Commission is tantamount to spot zoning. Because really what they did was they put in a use that was going into the zoning regulations at the same time that work was going on to file this application. And it's for a particular use with a particular applicant at a particular parcel. And therefore, even though there was industrial 2 zones elsewhere in the city, I think a compelling case could be made that what they essentially did was called spot zoning. And that is an illegal means of zoning and approving an application. Okay. So Charles, I see a number in chat, but as you know, I can't do 2 things at once.
Okay, well, actually, Mimi pointed out that Steve Kleppen said verbatim at the 415 ENNA meeting that he was in discussions with Benaroff for years about what could be done at that parcel. I don't know if Mimi would like to jump on and elaborate.
And then Mimi also, that was repeated twice during the public hearings. I think we have the date stamps on those as well. Yeah, Benaroff never really left the scene. And I think at one point, Steve had alluded to possible other interested parties, but none of them seemed viable. At one time, we had kind of a short list that we forced them to turn over to us so that we could see that the city was actually even, and that the property owner too, was even considering other less objectionable viable uses. But anyway, I don't know if you want to, did you want to add something to that, Mimi, or?
Hey, Diane.
Hi.
No, that you covered it. That's all. I just wanted to put, I wanted to put that there because I remember that meeting.
That's an important point. I should have made it. Is that they actually, I mean, they've admitted multiple times that they've been working for years on this.
Yeah.
And Steve Kleppen did divulge that it was that one of them was Benaroff. So
yeah, that they for years were discussing. He said, "Oh, we were discussing. This is exactly the type of use that we think would be the perfect fit for this site." I mean if that right there doesn't say it all.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
that he
Yeah,
just
and he
basically
still has,
admitted for years they've been talking about this. So,
yeah.
you know,
And I mean, I think it'll go. I mean, and he really dug in his heels on this, and then, you know, whether he firmly, you know, believes that personally, or just is so entrenched with um, whatever commitments were made to make this happen. We'll
right,
never actually know that, but suffice it to
right.
say that it's just surprising that more of the commissioners on a 6-3 vote didn't recognize this for what it is, and didn't feel that they had the case um, you know, be able to knock this down. So
Right. That was very puzzling. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
And additionally, I think the part two, the other piece that was so kind of surprising is that East Avenue was not studied. There were no traffic counts. There was
Yeah.
no traffic analysis of East Avenue. That was somehow kind of slid by. And the justification was what? That ConnDOT is reconfiguring that road, um, right?
Yeah, that there's gonna, right,
To
and the city is right, we're making
and therefore
improvements, and
that replaces somehow a actual traffic count study
yeah,
of what is it going to be 400 and I forget
yeah,
now 480 vehicles daily
480. Yep,
and four
exactly.
different
Yeah,
intervals coming
yeah.
and going, 38 of which are large trucks. No traffic study, folks. No traffic
And
study whatsoever of East Avenue.
yeah,
And then I
the
found out
interesting, yeah,
I was doing some deeper digging, and the gentleman from Ty and Bond,
mhm,
the Craig Yans,
mhm,
sits at the state level on the Vision Zero Council
mhm.
on both the engineering and education
Oh,
subcommittee.
really? Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so
Huh.
he sits on
That's
engineering and
interesting.
education subcommittees, which for Vision Zero, which specifically is about pedestrian
Safety,
cyclist safety.
right? Yeah,
There's a
that's
huge
interesting.
conflict. There's a huge conflict of interest there.
Yeah, exactly. Except the argument would be made, like, you know, even someone who sits on that is, you know, concluding that this isn't going to have any impact. So, I mean, you know, that,
But completely omitted the
yeah,
entire primary route coming from,
yeah, yeah.
where they're going to access from I-95.
And you know,
There's zero study.
the interesting thing with that, Mimi, is that they excluded East Avenue and Exit 16 in the Benaroff Warehouse Distribution Center study too.
I know.
They
I
only
know.
went as far as Fitch, and then they bragged on the fact that they actually extended out to more intersections than they had to. The
Yep.
new traffic mobility and parking folks, I don't think we're familiar with that, because when I did some pushback with them on how this all happened, they were saying that, well, we're the ones who actually asked for additional intersections, and they were added in. And I kind of told them, well, no, not really, because these are the
Yep.
same intersections from the warehouse distribution center, and they still excluded, and the city allowed them to exclude, you know, East Avenue, which I think is another thing that can get into.
I mean, that's a
So I
glaring
don't want to get into
omission.
the grounds,
Yeah.
but I mean that one is
Yeah.
that one
Like, see,
is telling.
that was surprising to me because I thought that's such a glaring omission that could almost
Mm,
render that application obsolete. And
yeah,
if it was found to be such,
mm, yeah,
then because
yeah.
of the time clock of the way the
Well,
zoning regs changed, right?
yeah,
Like literally they got it right in before everything
yeah,
changed. Then if
yeah.
they were to resubmit, they couldn't even resubmit a use like this,
Right,
right?
exactly. I mean,
So
it just would have been dead. You know, the interesting thing though is if you look at the regulations and how they snuck around East Avenue, it still baffles me that they could have done that on the warehouse distribution center. I'll never understand that.
me
Um,
neither.
Luckily, we
Yeah.
didn't have to come to that battle because they withdraw it. But
Yeah.
when they excluded it from this one, they actually took the using the ITE data and the all the regulations that the state uses, and you know,
Yeah.
the traffic engineers, and because it fell below, don't quote me on this, I want to say it was 20%, but as you start to
Hmm.
go out from the site and you start to
Yeah.
impact the lesser degree of traffic because you're going further out at each intersection, that you have
Yeah.
it like a stop point where you stop. And according to them, and I guess if you look at their chart, and I looked at the math and it seems okay, but someone else should probably review it, is that that their math, you know, according to them, would would not include East Avenue in it, because at that point you drop down to, I think it was less than a 20% of the total traffic, and therefore they didn't have to include it. But as you know, the
Right.
traffic engineer, the traffic planner that we had hired, also had disputed that, and
Yep.
said that East Avenue should be in there. And again, it's just baffling. I kind of figured
Yeah.
this thing would pass, but I didn't think, that just 3 commissioners would vote against it. I was really hoping that more of them would. But
Yeah.
I want to say something too about that quick, and we'll take other people. This thing was kind of doomed for appeal either way, just so people know this. With the approval of this, the applicants and the city knows that they're open up for, what could be a lengthy and costly and miserable appeal, because the community is just, sick of this, let's say. It's just a matter of seeing, if someone steps up to the plate to actually put their name to this. But had the city denied this application, there's no doubt in my mind that Attorney Suchy and Beneroff would have had their appeal. They may have had it ready to go to file it, the day the approval got noticed, because they weren't going to be investing this amount of money and being in bed with the M.T.A and Metro North. By the way, they started calling it Metro North headquarters.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the rebuttal, when they had the chief engineer speak, at least a couple of times she noted it as being Metro North's new headquarters. But
Yeah, I caught
what
that.
up with that?
And even the Metro North, the MTA representative even said, we look forward to a furthering public-private, or like a furthering
Right.
New York, Connecticut MTA partnership, with New
Right.
York and Connecticut.
Yeah.
Like she seemed very confident. Like she
Yeah.
knew something we don't know. Like we're going to
Well,
see
yeah,
more of
and
these hubs, maybe.
Yeah, and I guess they can afford to be confident when all of this stuff is done behind closed doors, and it's just
Right.
and I think some of the, the extended public hearing and all of that, I have to say, I think was just for show. Because if it was on appeal, with anything having to do with, lack of public input or public information, or they could go back and say, we posted everything, we had multiple hearings, we kept it, the whole bit. But
Yeah.
in the end, I think it's not just, and many residents raise this point, it's not just this application, it's what now could happen on that parcel in relationship to this. And I think that we, in hindsight, I kind of regret not pushing back on the subdivision, because I'm not sure what role that played in whether or not this thing could have come through, when the subdivision went through to break the parcel into 3. But, I don't see this thing as not expanding. When you take a look at some of the numbers that are going to be investments in not only Metro North and the MTA, but also in high-speed rail. At some point, the feds are still eager to do that. I see that this thing could only become, bigger and worse as well. Okay, am I back here too? Okay. I think that there are, I'm not going to call people out here by name, but I know that there are some folks here who were instrumental in trying to beat this thing back, and possibly some abutters. So I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. But if anybody wants to put some questions in chat, or wants to ask anything specific, or wants to talk about what the next steps possibly could be, we can certainly do that now, or we can do it offline. Couple of other things quickly, though, is I had multiple reports in from a resident on Myrtle Street that said, kind of out of nowhere, the amount of truck traffic with big trucks on Myrtle has just increased crazy. And a lot of it is like in the middle of the night, like between 2 and 4 in the morning. And so it seems like that this could be the route going to and from Norden, either in relationship to Metro North, with getting ready for that operation there, or possibly still the walk bridge project. But we know that there's a lot of activity and these trucks are turning from Strawberry Hill onto Myrtle. And this is exactly what we predicted for the Metro North traffic as well, that any truck that's coming down and is going to be heading towards the highway, it's not going to take them long to figure out that there's a no turn on red on Fitch, and on Myrtle, in the middle of the night, you can pretty much come right through. The problem with Myrtle too is when the trucks come down there, as you know, they can't really make that turn. And at both Fitch and Myrtle, any large truck actually forces the opposing traffic to either stop well ahead of the white line or back up or move over, and it's just a disaster. So we have asked that resident for them, and also to ask their neighbors if there's anyone that has like a Ring video or security video at the front of their house that would be recording at night. It would be very helpful to have those recordings. And I would advise that for anyone on this call who's on any of the streets associated with getting in and out of Norden. If you're experiencing the same thing, either start taking pictures, take videos, security camera videos, and let's get those into ENNA, and let's start getting those into the city as evidence of what this impact is. Okay. Who we have? Judy?
Judy's hands up.
Diane, as always, had an idea about the lawyer issue.
Okay.
There are a number of law schools around here, and they usually have some kind of clinics that do sort of pro bono work. I mean, I just have been punching at my phone here, Googling. I mean, there's Yale, Quinnipiac, there's Pace, just in this area here. And I'm thinking of maybe contacting them and seeing if they had a clinic that might be interested in helping us.
Yeah, I think that's a super idea. I wasn't aware of that, or if I was, I've long forgotten it. And if it's something where they may take on any kind of interesting case, not just criminal or some specialty, I think it's worthwhile.
They usually do it for indigent people, but whatever.
Well, that would ENNA would qualify. So
Yeah.
if we approach them as a Lord knows, by the way, and so I've tossed these numbers out. I mean, it's just a little bit that we were able to try to contract for experts and the lawyer and the other fees in terms of flyers and communication and all that stuff is it's at or near $15,000. That is a huge amount of money for a little organization like ENNA, and we're considering at the moment actually doing a funding appeal just to be able to replace the some of the coffers so we don't go completely in the red over here. So if you're so inclined, if you could make even a modest donation, it helps. And like I said, we'll probably end up having to make an appeal for donations, which we don't normally do, except periodically to just say, and in our emails we'll say if you can donate. We always used to do one at the end of the year too, but we dropped that a few years ago. But anyway, keep your eyes out for that. Judy, I would just ask, would you, or is there anyone on this call, you can raise your hand if there's anyone who has the time or the interest in being able to reach out to those universities and see how those programs work, and if someone might be saying, wow, this is really interesting and love to help.
Well, I can send out an email, generally to a number of places and call a few if I have time. I feel like I need to do this all right away, but maybe if it's on Wednesday, I have a lot more time and I can do this because I'm also concerned about the backdoor shenanigans. Yeah. Um,
And it's unfortunate because the original group from Sasqua Hills and that area that did the funding and lawyered up with the same lawyer, by the way, who helped to try to beat back the warehouse distribution application that was withdrawn. Really, the silence has been kind of deafening. And all I'm suggesting, Judy, is just to kind of reach out and see if they do this, because then ENNA, if they don't do anything like this, I can't, because I work full time and we all do. We just can't waste our time on it. But if they do, then I'd be happy to send a formal inquiry from ENNA. The problem is, the clock is already ticking now to the 25th.
Yeah.
And even if they take on a case like this, they can't take it on without an abutter either, because they need a legal appellant,
right. And
someone
Diane,
with standing.
I mean, I never knew that there had been a taking of property for the DOT, which sort of freezes out a whole lot of people who think they are abutters.
Yeah, and my understanding before we had a little site tour over there was that he was renting the property to the DOT at that parcel. It wasn't until we went on a site tour that he said that the DOT actually, took the property by eminent domain. And of course, he doesn't bother to tell people that he was, I'm sure, very highly paid for that. But, well, the other thing is too, is that maybe, I think one of the other possibilities with this is that I think under the environmental laws, that it may be possible to appeal under the environmental laws, because that protects all the residents of Connecticut. And so there could be, some sort of an environmental justice case that's brought where I don't believe that you need an actual legal abutter. And I think Liz Suchy tried to get out ahead of that, as did, I think, one of their consultants as well. Tried to get out ahead of us pulling the environmental justice card. But again, we would need, to get the ball rolling on that. And the better case is to at least have an abutter to do the appeal. And then if there's something that can be done under filing under the environmental justice jurisdiction, that would help too. But Judy, if you could at least reach out to them, say on Wednesday.
I'll try to do that, but it's just a thought I had. So
yeah, no, that's great. And I'm certainly, I'm always hesitant for, I feel myself too, like I don't want to raise my hand with suggestions, because then I'm the one who gets stuck doing it. And I didn't, that's what I'm not intending to do. But if there's someone else who can do it or help, that would be great. And I think the main question would be is A, do you do this type of work, and are you interested in this? And oh, by the way, the statutory time clock is close of business on the 25th. So they would have to know that. And things can happen very quickly, because like I said, you don't need the whole appeal case. You only need to fill out like a form, and it gets served to the city, and then it gets filed with the clerk of the court. And it's pretty simple. Can happen quick.
Well, I'll see what I can do to move it along, but I thought I would mention it. Yeah. I mean,
if there's anybody else who's listening that can help out with that, and you don't want to raise your hand here, shoot me an email quick, and maybe I can hook you up with Judy, and you can split up the.
I don't even know if it has to be somebody close by. I mean, maybe.
No, I mean, just like to split up the list. If there's 4 schools, and maybe you take 2 and another person take 2, kind of idea.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is.
You mean close by in the school? You mean, is that what you meant?
Yeah, I meant, maybe even from someone from out of state has a clinic, might be willing to do this.
Right. Yeah, that might be a little bit harder to coordinate, but I think if anybody's willing to give this a shot, if we can at least throw it out there and see, and then if nothing else, maybe we have this in our toolkit. I have a feeling we're going to have these applications a lot in the future, not necessarily in the industrial ones, but we're going to have a lot of applications that we're not really fond of. So
yeah,
I think we're probably going to need like a cookie cutter boilerplate going forward of the arsenal there. Is that somebody talking in the background, Judy, to us, or?
No, sorry. My
Okay.
husband-
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions about stuff going on in East Norwalk? There's a ton of stuff going on. I didn't do a full agenda, but if there's something on your mind. Charles?
I just want to make people aware that the East Norwalk train station is supposedly closing for another 3 weeks. I reached out to the Walkbridge people today. I did not receive any dates or any kind of press release last time. I think we had to actually push for the shuttle bus.
Mhm.
So hopefully they'll provide one again.
Okay.
But as of now, I have no information on when that closure actually is going to happen.
Okay.
It's not on their website.
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, keep us posted and I'll push that out there. And you sent it to the regular email, the Walkbridge
Yes.
CT? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thanks. And I think that's the second and last of the long closures. I think there was only 2 scheduled, the 2-3 week closures. So again, the type of thing I don't think they would dare do elsewhere. Poor East Norwalk. It's crazy. And I know we're all still anxiously awaiting to talk about and see what could possibly happen with residential parking. I think there's some other things that we need to kind of clarify with the city of whether they're on or off the table. Oh, that reminds me, I just saw on the traffic commission, the traffic authority agenda today, had an item to approve the changing of the parking on Gregory Boulevard as it goes down to Marvin Beach, alongside of Fitch Park. And apparently the parking used to be on the west side of Gregory Boulevard and, in front of the houses. And because so many people come and park there for Fitch Park, they're now changing the majority of the parking to be on the east side as you're heading south on Gregory, so that the parking is along Fitch Park. The justification that was in the transportation mobility parking letter to the traffic authority was that they had numerous requests from residents, and that's why they were putting it in. I assume it got approved, but because I was working, I wasn't on that meeting. I also should share with you folks that I had a lengthy conversation with Jim Travers and Garrett Bilella from TMP, Traffic Mobility and Parking, regarding this nonsense of Fitch Street at Strawberry Hill, with looking to modify that with what looks to be something that would make it way easier for trucks to navigate both of those turns. And I had reminded them, because they probably didn't know because they weren't here, that ENNA several years ago had asked the traffic authority and the traffic engineers to consider a rotary or a traffic circle there. And the mayor thought it was a great idea, and the then chief of police thought it was a fabulous location, and the traffic guys thought it was a great idea. And then suddenly it went away, and actually the traffic engineer who was promoting it for us, actually he ended up resigning and leaving. So that's all interesting. But in any event, they were trying to tell me that that intersection wouldn't qualify for it, even though the conceptual plan for it that was presented to the traffic authority years ago said that was a perfect site for it, and it wouldn't even require any property takings to do it. So when I asked them about why they were considering this other modification there, they said that the intersection isn't really safe the way it's designed. And I can't argue with that. But they said that they had gotten requests in from residents. And because that type of thing is FOIable under Freedom of Information, I asked them, can you tell me specifically who? Because we hadn't heard from anyone, not that we know everyone, but we hadn't heard from anyone. And people knew we were promoting the rotary or the roundabout. And ultimately, they said that the request came in from the Bike Walk Commission. So just thought I'd share that tidbit, because Sometimes we just need a little levity in here. You just can't make this up. So from residents to it was the bike walk commission. So I'm hoping that thing doesn't come to fruition. I think, I understand their point that they were actually making it, reducing the lane width, which typically calms traffic and helps with safety. But at the same time, they were taking out the little, what do you call, like the little triangle thing that's there. And so whenever you have one of those and you take that out, then it, kind of, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know, going and coming, that makes it way easier for a tractor trailer. I don't care if it's a WB 74 or 76, whatever all of these that they're classifying. By the way, they were saying that they were never looking at the larger size. But when you go to the conceptual drawing that they had for the improvement, they had the larger size tractor trailer number on there. So it's crazy. It's just crazy. You can't make this stuff up, honestly. That's it. Okay,
Yeah.
so stay tuned. I'm going to try to clean up that timeline and get a little bit more information out there. I'll still be working behind the scenes with the residents and others to see if any type of an appeal can happen. Until June 25th comes and goes, I'll do whatever I can do on behalf of ENNA. And then just follow your emails and we'll let you know whether or not we're going to have a July meeting. If we are going to have a July meeting, we have had a couple people from the police department who have been patiently waiting to be our guests, and nothing urgent, just to come in and kind of do the usual community police stuff and see what's going on and introduce themselves. But if we do have a July meeting, I definitely will commit to having those folks because they've been waiting. And if any of you folks have any suggestions for guest speakers that you'd like, either from within city government or some other interesting topic that we think impacts East Norwalk, send it in and we'll certainly consider that.